Hey there, it's Olivia-Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you the final installment in my elemental book recommendations, and I'm going to be recommending you some air related books. Air was definitely the hardest element to find books for, so you'll see how I chose these ones and fit them in to this theme, but let's get right down to the books because we are going to breeze our way right through them. So the first book that I have to recommend you is Punching the Air by Zoboi and Yusef Salaam, and this one is a novel in verse all about a teenage boy who gets falsely accused of his crime and falsely imprisoned. It goes into the law case at the beginning and then the false imprisonment and his feelings and emotions throughout this whole process, and it really focuses on his feelings and emotions. And I've chose this one because, you know, as the title says, Punching the Air, because it's a novel in verse, it does a lot of imagery the way that poems do, but incorporates it into the prose writing. And one of the images that it uses is air, suffocation, oppressing, the feeling of not having enough air, not having enough room to breathe, wanting to punch through the air. All of that imagery is really woven into this novel in verse, so I thought it was the perfect one to recommend for this video, and I really loved it. I read this in a single day and I was surprised by how this book had a lot of anger in it, had a lot of sadness, had a lot of injustice, but it also managed to have some hope too, and I thought that was very well done. The next book that I have to recommend you is The Martian by Weir. Now this one is because when you are in space and when you are on Mars, where this book takes place, oxygen is very important. You don't want to run out of oxygen and you just need to make sure you have enough of it. And this book follows this man called Mark Watney, and he is on a mission in space with his group when it seems like he dies while they're in action, and he ends up stranded on Mars all alone. And once he realizes this, he does his very best to try and get back to Earth, get back home before he runs out of provisions, because when he does, there's no way that he can get home because he would be dead. So that's what this book is about. I absolutely love this book. I raced through it even though it's science fiction. I just thought it was so suspenseful and I was so excited to know what the end was going to be like. It never got boring because it's just one man on Mars, but it never got boring, and it's got a lot of scientific jargon as it explains things that he's doing to try and help himself get back there. There's a lot of language like that, so if that's not your thing, this might not be for you, but I thought it was absolutely fantastic and I had such good fun reading this book, and I can't wait to read more by this author as well. The next book I have is another novel in verse, and that is Clap When You Land by Acevedo, and this novel in verse is about a plane crash that really did happen in real life, but it's a fictional story about a plane crash, and on this plane crash is a father, and the father actually has more than one family, and this is only recognised after the plane crash. So we're following these two daughters as they are struggling with their feelings of grief, but also as they're discovering that they might have another family member, and you can really see how their lives are very different because one of them lives in the US and the other one lives in the Dominican Republic, so they both have very different lives, and it's about that. And I thought this book was absolutely fantastic. Grief is just an emotion that is very strong and is very potent, and it can be hard to write, but Acevedo manages to do that fantastically. Both of these girls felt so distinct and different and had their own voices, and I appreciated both of them. I appreciated the memories that we get to see of their father, and I just thought this was absolutely fantastic novel in verse. Brilliant, 5 stars, and I recommend it for this video because of the fact that it is focused on, or it happens because of, a plane crash and planes fly through the air. Changing the tone quite a bit here, we have a memoir, and that is A Nurse's Story by Louise with Sarah Johnson, and this one is a memoir from a nurse during the COVID crisis. So this is more so at the beginning of the pandemic and the COVID crisis, where lots of information was still being discovered and developed about COVID, and every information that these nurses and medical staff were getting was changing quite frequently, when you needed to wear full PPE while dealing with COVID cases, and when hospitals were quite flooded. So it's very intense and it goes into that, but it also balances some of those moments with what life was like before the COVID crisis, so that we can compare what it was like for nurses beforehand, before the pandemic started. And I chose this one because of the fact that COVID is an airborne condition and it spreads through the air, so I thought it fits with the recommendations. I thought this was really good, and it was really jarring to read because it was emotional. I was also reading it in the middle of the pandemic itself, but yeah, I do recommend this memoir. Now we're going into the ones where it's a bit more of a stretch. So the first one I have to recommend is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, which is an older horror story that I really like, and it's about this haunted house, which is Hill House, and there's someone who's very interested in haunted houses and discovering if they're truly haunted, so he decides he's going to go there, and he invites 3 guests to come along with him. And I had a lot of fun with this one. I really like the banter between all of the characters. I really liked how it was a reflection of more than just the haunted house. It was also a reflection of how a particular character is haunted and how she changed during the duration of being there. I enjoyed seeing that storyline, and I chose this one for this recommendations video because lots of things happen with the air. I think when it comes to like ghosts and haunting, it's a very airborne kind of process, but also this house has lots of weird things where, you know, doors slam by themselves, maybe they shake by themselves, maybe there's patches of very cold air in certain areas of the house, and that's why I chose it to fit this video. I feel like this is the one that's quite a bit of a stretch. I'm also going to be recommending Gone by Michael Grant. This is a young adult kind of book. What happens is one day a certain area of the world, a few streets and cities are covered with a dome, and everyone who is over the age of 15, everyone who is an adult, poof, they disappear, and all of these 15-year-olds are left behind. And as soon as you turn 15, you also happen to disappear, and some of these teenagers start to develop supernatural powers while trapped under this dome. So that's what this book is all about, and it's one from my childhood that I just really loved. I love this series, and I think it gets better with each and every single book. Since then, I've seen some people say that the rep in some places is not that great. I can't speak on it myself because I still have not reread it recently, although I used to reread it all the time, and I do want to reread it soon, but I still thought I'd recommend it because people disappear into thin air as soon as they turn 15, and that is quite a big mystery that needs to be solved in this series. We have a middle grade novel, and that is Nevermoor by Jessica Townsend. This is a middle grade novel that I did a read along for with Sabine from Sabine's Book Nook, and it was a lot of fun. This is the first one in a series, and in this series we follow Morrigan Crow, who is a cursed child. Every single thing that ever goes wrong is her fault, and she is fated to die on a certain day quite young, and when that time comes, somebody called Jupiter North bursts into her life and whisks her away to this magical world called Nevermoor, where things are very different, and she has to learn how to fit in and try her best to be able to stay there. And I thought this first book was quite magical and whimsical and a lot of fun, and as you can see on the cover, Morrigan Crow has an umbrella, and I would say that that is what fits into the air theme, because the way that certain characters travel in this book involves an umbrella, a lot of faith, and quite a lot of air, which is again another stretch for how I'm including this one, but I'm doing it anyway. And I feel like the series really progresses from here. This is not my favourite one in the series. My favourite one so far has definitely been the second one, and the fourth one has been announced, so we will be getting more books, but I really had a lot of fun with this series. Last but not least, we have the biggest stretch on this list, and that is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. And this is the first book in a series which is set, I believe, in like a whole universe of books that are all interconnected, and this is the only one I've read so far, but I had a lot of fun reading this book. This book is described as they live in this world where Scar exist, and Scars are treated as slaves, and they're under this very toxic regime, and there is now an uprising that is occurring and happening, and this uprising has a few talented people at its core, so maybe it's the most likely to succeed than ever before, and that's all the back really tells you. And I would say that this one has an ensemble cast, like a group of people working together, but our main character Vin is especially learning what she can and can't do, and one of the things that she can do involves metal and burning metal, which is not anything to do with air, but because of what they can do when they burn metal, I feel like they spend a lot of time flying through the air, okay? They spend a lot of time jumping through the air and manipulating things in the air, and there's more technicalities to just like, I have a power where I control air and I can fly, but because of what they can do, I've decided to include in this recommendations video. Seeing as I'm making these videos, you can't even argue with me. It's already been done. It's a done deal. But I had a lot of fun with this book. I think what I liked about it was seeing these group of characters working together, and I'm not a big fan of like training montages and learning powers, but in this one it's spread out throughout the book so well and paced into the book so well that I loved seeing it. I loved getting the technical descriptions of what they can do and how it really works, and I think the world building was one of the best things about this book for me. I was also very satisfied with the plot and what happened. I think it went in unexpected directions and it was all twisty-turny enough for me to be happy. I think sometimes this book is paced a bit weirdly, like sometimes it has some slow moments but then it just goes right back into an exciting moment, but you feel the slow moment before it switches to an excited moment, so take that as you will. But I thought it's a good series and I'm looking forward to when I get to read the second book. There you have it. Those are 8 books that have the air theme or relate to air in some form or way that I would recommend people read. Please let me know in the comment section down below if you have more air book recommendations. I wonder what people will come up with because I struggled with these ones. And I hope you've been enjoying this elemental video series that I did briefly. There's no more elements so it's over, but I hope you had a good time. I'll leave a link to the water, earth and the other one, the water, earth and fire videos down below if you want some more elemental recommendations. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't you forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!